Have you moved to another state in the last 5 years? What state was it, and are you happy with the move? This was a question I asked in a survey earlier this year. I received about 3,500 responses, and I had an optional section for people to leave a comment about their move. About 23% left comments. What's strange about this is when I asked about states people regretted moving to, I had over 5,000 responses and only about 9% left comments. This kind of tells me that we got more people that like the negative, the dark side of things. They're just not that committed. A little lazy. Kind of like Darth Vader working at a call center. Another strange thing was we had some overlap. This was 2 different surveys done a couple months apart, and a couple states made both lists. Now, even though I've explained that to you, that won't stop people from leaving comments like, "Hey Briggs, this state was on the other list that people regretted. Which is it?" Here's the answer. It's both. It is 2 different surveys. People are different, and these surveys are based on opinions. It's not a math problem. There isn't a single answer. And honestly, that's my favorite part about human beings. We're all different with many opinions and different experiences. And that's with everything in life. What food you like, what politics you believe in, which religions you follow, what kind of people you're attracted to. We're all different. And just because someone doesn't like barbecue and you love barbecue doesn't mean they're wrong. So just like the states people regretted moving to, I will list the states with the most votes and the reason that seemed to pop up most often. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Utah. Utah always seems to be a hot spot for people moving. It's safe, has great schools, it has one of the best or the best economy in the United States right now. Now, the best is different from the largest. The largest is California. Best means people are making money, businesses are making money, and people are moving to Utah. I said this recently in another video. I think if people could get past the fact that, the Mormon religion really has a lot to do with Utah, and I think that's kind of put a stereotype for the state in people's heads that really don't understand it. You don't have to be a Mormon to live in Utah. It helps, but you don't have to be one. The people that claim they're happy with their move to Utah often listed crime. They got a really low crime rate. They got good schools and affordable housing. Now, that's going to vary from place to place. They do have some affordable real estate when you consider how nice the place is. Number 9, Idaho. So this is the first one that overlapped. A lot of people said they regretted their move to Idaho, but I'd say just about as many loved their move to Idaho. So it's kind of 50-50. Idaho's been a hot spot for everyone moving in probably the last decade. A lot of Californians have moved up there, but according to the US Census, so have a lot of Floridians, New Yorkers, and Texans. Idaho's another state that's relatively safe. They've got beautiful landscapes and plenty of open space. One of the biggest complaints on the other one is it's getting too crowded. Well, like I said in that video, if you don't want people to move to your state, make your state suck. People don't want to move places that suck. Nobody's moving to Louisiana these days, or Mississippi. In my opinion, I think one of the most overlooked places to move to in Idaho is Moscow, Idaho. And it's spelt Moscow, but it's pronounced Moscow. Whenever someone's moving to Idaho, you always hear them moving to Twin Falls, Idaho Falls, Pocatello, or Boise, and even Coeur d'Alene. My opinion, I think Moscow is a little bit better. The reasons that popped up the most were cost of living and the great outdoors. You'll see that on a lot of these. I've noticed states that people don't regret moving to have great outdoors. You'll see as we go along. Number 8, Virginia. Virginia all around is a pretty good state. I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, it's really picked up a lot of momentum in their popularity, I guess you could say. A lot of people around the country are moving to Virginia. It seemed like before only people from the Eastern Seaboard would move to Virginia, or people that needed to work for the government. Overall, the state's crime isn't bad. They've got decent schools. Their healthcare is pretty good. And a lot of tech companies have moved to Virginia in the last 10 years, I would say. So these all help with its popularity. And one of the main reasons people listed why they love their move, they got a really good job in Virginia and they like their neighbors. Number 7, Montana. Montana's another one of those places that kind of makes the list on the great outdoors alone. I mean, that's one of the most common things that people brought up is they like the outdoor lifestyle and they like the small towns. A lot of small towns in Montana have seen some pretty good growth in recent years, thanks to the remote worker movement. When I was living in California, a lot of people that I knew were moving to Montana, and Billings seemed to be the landing spot for most of them. It's also become very popular with a lot of celebrities. They all seem to be moving around the Jackson Hole area. And stop typing. Jackson Hole's in Wyoming, not Montana. All right, be honest. In the comment section, how many of you started leaving a comment? But yeah, Montana does get its fair share of celebrities moving there. A lot of them will end up in Coeur d'Alene area or Whitefish. But the most common things I would say would be cost of living, cost of housing, and the great outdoors for this one also. Number 6, Vermont. Vermont's another one of those states that's just beautiful. Great skiing, great scenery, amazing small towns, and I think that's how it's got on the list. A lot of these small towns, again, are some of the ones that are benefiting from the remote worker craze. A lot of people hold the stereotype that Vermont is a state for older people. Well, they did have one of the oldest population overall for a long time, and then around 10 years ago, a lot of Generation X, Millennials, and Generation Z, or Zoomers, started moving into Vermont. Millennials and Generation Z are very much outdoor people, and Vermont has a lot of outdoor stuff to do. The reasons most often given for moving to Vermont, it's not as crowded and it has all the seasons. Now that's just something that someone from Texas, California, Arizona, Nevada say when they move someplace. They have all the seasons, because in California, Nevada, and Texas, you really don't. Number 5, Washington State. There is this strange thing about Washington, and I think a lot of people there are really bitter and they're upset that they can't afford to live in their own state anymore. I think that's a big problem, at least in the comment section of any video that I state the obvious. Washington is a very popular state to move to. In the last 3 or 4 years, the evergreen state continually shows up in top 10 lists when you're talking about good things in a state. A lot of retirees are choosing Washington because it's one of the 9 states that doesn't have a state income tax. And I know they got other taxes and things like that. I get it. But they don't have a state income tax, and to a lot of people, that's very important. Sure, Seattle has a lot of problems with homeless, crime, and extremely expensive rent and real estate prices. But the entire state is not Seattle. Southern Washington is becoming an option for a lot of people, especially down near the Portland area. It's right across the river from Portland, Oregon, with half the problems and lower rent and real estate prices. When it came to the reasons people gave for loving their move to Washington State, it was all over the map. There's tons of different reasons and nothing really stood out above all the rest, even though one person did say they wanted to live closer to the original Starbucks. I've been to that Starbucks. It's not that exciting. I've never actually been inside that Starbucks because there's always a line like 30 minutes long. I just want to stop at that line and go, people, it's just coffee. There's a Starbucks 4 blocks away with no line. Number 4, Colorado. Colorado is another one that's drawn in the millennials and the Gen Z. Years ago, it was pulling in the Gen X and everyone else, and most of it has to do with the great outdoors. The Rocky Mountains right there, every kind of skiing, hiking, camping, fishing, rafting, kayaking. They got it all in the Centennial State. Denver isn't as nice as it used to be, but the rest of the state is outstanding in most places. The most common answers for wanting to move to Colorado was to be closer to nature or some other wording. It all boiled down to people wanted to be closer to nature. Number 3, Minnesota. This one kind of surprised me. I mean, Minnesota's a nice state. It does have Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they've got some issues there, but most of the state is another one that's great for people that want to be outdoors. It's affordable in both cost of living and real estate and rent, I guess. They have amazing small towns. They have lakes everywhere. It's the state of 10,000 lakes, land of 10,000 lakes, whatever. And it gets very cold, but not everyone hates the cold. So yeah, the most common reason for being happy with the move to Minnesota, it was always around cost of living or real estate, something like that. Basically, affordability was a big thing for people moving to Minnesota. I did see a strange amount, wasn't number 1 or anything like that, but there was a lot of people that mentioned fishing. They said they like to fish. They want to move to Minnesota where they can fish all the time. All right, if that's what gets your motor going, go with it. Number 2, Wisconsin. Yes, the Badger State shows up at number 2. And why not? It's a great place to live, especially if you've got a family. This is, I would say, one of the top 5 states to raise a family in. Low crime, good schools, lots of outdoor activities. I mean, statewide, not just in some city or something like that. Wisconsin really only has one city that has any notable crime, and that's Milwaukee. And when you compare Milwaukee to places like Memphis, Detroit, or Chicago or something like that, it's not that terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And those are the two most common reasons given for being happy with their move to Wisconsin. It's a great place for families and it has a low crime rate. You just got to deal with some pretty brutal winters like you do in Minnesota and Vermont and even parts of Colorado. One person did mention they love Wisconsin, but they did have a problem with the people there. They said that they're from New Jersey and the people in Wisconsin are really nice, so you think they're up to something. He said coming from New Jersey, if someone's too nice for you, you put your hand on your wallet and make sure they're not trying to get it. All right, before we get to number 1, 2 states that almost made this list. Number 12 was Oregon, and number 11 was Maine. Also, if you're thinking about moving to another state and you need a real estate agent, there's a link for Home and Money down below, and they can help you find a real estate agent anywhere in the nation, along with some other things they do on that website. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Wyoming. Yes, Wyoming is one of those states that not many people regret moving to. Matter of fact, it beat number 2 on this list of Wisconsin by a good amount. Wyoming, like Montana and Idaho, it's one of those states that's been gaining popularity out west in the last 5, 6, 7 years. As Washington and Oregon kind of slowed down, they've picked up the slack. And it's not just Californians moving to Wyoming. They get a lot of New Yorkers moving there and a lot of Texans also. A lot of wealthy people have really nice homes in the Jackson area, like their second home, their vacation home, whatever. Wyoming is a very beautiful state, and that's another one of the reasons people want to move there. They want to be closer to nature. Affordability, nature, and not that many people live in Wyoming. Those were the main reasons people said they're happy with their move to the Cowboy State. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.